Are you yearning to wake up each morning and ignite a new meaning and purpose in life and beyond? Welcome, everyone. I'm Michael McGinnis, an award-winning author, speaker, and educator on human potential, and your host on You Can Do It, Inspiring Growth, Igniting Potential. Life presents us with challenges that serve as catalysts for growth. The pivotal question is, how do we respond to these challenges? Or better yet, opportunities. Do we adopt a victim mindset or rise to become victors? Our goal here is to guide and inspire you to master the most amazing journey you have, your life. You Can Do It starts now. Hey everybody, Michael McGinnis here with You Can Do It. We're continuing that story. As I mentioned last time, we were in Sedona and I talked about leading up to this experience. And that's really the essence, really what I want to focus on today. And I'll be upfront. I rarely ever told this story, right? And in fact, even since then, years later, very, very few occasions with people I really only trusted just because, these stories, they're strange, right? They're different and they could lead himself wide open to judgment, perception, and everything. But I'm going to leave that all on the sideline because this was important. And really, it's at times it's characteristics of what sometimes people go through when they start venturing down this journey. And so that's really going to be the emphasis here is what is this story I didn't tell? And so here we go, right? So I was with that group. We were still in Sedona, and we all had the group had met, and we were sitting on side of a hill, and we all put out our mats, and we were going to have just a group meditation. And I'd been okay with meditation. I'd done it. I never really felt like I was going deep. I was still very much in my mind, so I knew it was going to take a lot of practice to get there. But again, I was happy to join it with the group. It was such a fantastic time, so eventful, as I shared last time. And so we started this meditation, and there I was, laying back, right? And all of us were just laying back and not concerned about falling asleep or anything, wasn't tired. And I was just listening to the guided meditation that the leader there was sharing at that point. And, at that moment, just within a few moments, the strangest thing happened. And these are the best words that I can sort of share with going through this experience. But all of a sudden, I literally felt myself falling. Now, I couldn't explain that because I was laying on the side of a hill, but yet I felt myself falling. And there was sort of this duality, and that's, I guess, the only word I can really use to describe of it is I knew I was on the ground, I felt that, but what was this falling experience? But at the same time, it wasn't scary, and that was a strange thing. Usually, when you're falling, free falling in particular, it'd be massively fearful, but I wasn't. And so I went with it. And again, open mind, but it really wasn't that. It was just comfortable. I can't explain it any further than that. And so, anyways, is I was descending. I was just free falling, and it was feeling okay. And at some point, as I was falling, I felt myself, still right there on the hillside, and this duality. Well, anyways, this is as I fell, I started to descend in the cave. Now, I'm showing an image here because that's the best representation of what I experienced. I was Googling at one point, just caves, and this one really stood out. And as I was talking to somebody else, they helped me sort of add in the image of sort of this light and things. And I'll explain those things as I go through the process. Well, as I came into this cave, and I fell into this cave, that's the best way to describe it, but I was flying, and I was able to, at that point, fly around. And so I was flying around the cave. Okay, you could probably say peyote, whatever you want. I would have thought the same thing. And again, through this whole process, I suggest that you approach everything here with discernment, right? I would have thought, this was crazy, or what is this person really saying, or whatever. And that's all okay. All I would suggest is an open mind, and maybe through hearing some of these experiences, some others that experience them. But what I can share is this is what I experienced. So take it for what it was, but it was really profound and powerful. And so here I was flying around in this cave. And it was enough light that, I could see myself around. And honestly, I was enjoying flying. I felt like the book, the Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, right? The seagull, and I remember that story, of which he was flying around, and there was a real spiritual quest for Jonathan the seagull. But in any case, I was flying around and having fun, and it was quite an experience. Well, after a couple of moments, there was this image that I saw over on one of the cliffs. And you'll sort of see that as an upper left or left-hand side of the image, sort of see just sort of a whitish image. And if you see through that image, you sort of see the characteristics of wings. Well, that's what I saw, right? It was this image, and I go, wow, what's that? And as I flew closer, I realized, oh my God, I know who this is. Well, this was the angelic aspect of the woman that I had recently broken off the relationship. Remember last time I talked about that was really one of my more, it was a traumatic breakup for me and was going through a tough time. And remember the individual said that I met on the side of Sedona, said at some point you'll get there and experience something to be profound and give you some learning about this. Well, I never anticipated this, but that's what it was. And so I flew over to her, right? I'm using these words because that's the best way to represent it. And I flew up, and all I saw was this amazingly beautiful, angelic image. And I can remember saying her name. I said, my God, you're beautiful. And it was just so angelic. And it was at that moment that she looked right at me. And this is profound. And she said, Mike, don't you see I needed to let you go so that you could learn how to fly? Wow. Still brings back that emotional profoundness of that experience. And in that absolute moment, I knew everything was okay. It all made sense. Now, it would take me time to really process this, but I knew it was her. I knew it was this higher aspect of her, even though I didn't even know what those terms meant at that time. I wouldn't even have characterized it as that, but that it was okay, and that I needed to fly, and there I was flying, right? Literally flying. And here I was on this whole modern day vision quest, right? And if it wasn't for that breakup, there's no doubt I wouldn't have been experiencing these things. So super profound. But the thing didn't stop there. The experience didn't stop there. And I was just feeling okay. And then at that moment, and you'll see another area where there's sort of this bright light shining through part of the rock. And it was, I just knew I had to go there. I was drawn to that light. So let me just preface this because it's going to have a religious figure, which I grew up. I grew up Catholic, and I was really pursuing spirituality. So I say this as it was, right? It is a just simply was. So let me explain it. So I flew into this bright light. It was just like a moth flying to a bright light. I was just drawn to it. And I flew in, and it was like a hole in the rock, and I went right in through that. Well, it was at that point I just stopped and stared at this enormous image, and there was a beauty, and it was the Christ. It was the image that I saw on the cards, that we had when we had mass and services. There was this, and there was this big red heart, that was there, and he just looked at me and smiled, and I was overwhelmed. I was so totally overwhelmed at that point. And then in that moment, with that smile from the heart image, from him, the heart, uh, was this bright light that shone right directly to my heart. And it came in, and I felt just this enormous blast. That's all I can say. It was like I blew up. In that moment, it was just a blast of bright light. Well, in that exact moment, I felt myself right back on the hillside. And I still was in the experience, so wasn't there. But what had happened is that a number of people around me were running over to me. And they were touching me and saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because what they were witnessing was me in the equivalent of like an epileptic seizure. I don't have epilepsy. I never had seizures before. Uh, but they said I was shaking. I was with this like rapid shaking, and it scared other people. And they had come over to try to provide assistance. And at that moment, I woke up. I was there on the hillside, and I didn't even know what to say. I knew just what happened. Are you okay? And all I didn't even know the words. I didn't even muster anything. And so people probably thought I was in shock or something else like that too. And then I'd say, no, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. And they were still around me, just in the case that something that continued to happen. And I just reinforced, I'm okay, okay. I never brought this up. It was just so unbelievable at that point that I didn't even know what to say. You know, and and so it eventually it just settled in. It settled into me. I can remember laying awake for weeks on end, just really contemplating this whole thing and thinking back of that individual who told me this something I was going to experience something, and here it was. And it was really interesting because you saw an image before of the church on the hillside. That was there in Sedona. And the group was going to that church following the meditation. And I was in there and I was just, I saw, some friends of mine over here. So I was walking across what would have been the sort of the front. There was a lot of space. And so I was just walking across the carpet over to go and meet my friends. And then this person, it was Tom Sawyer was there. And Tom, who I totally trusted by that point, I still had not disclosed to him what I had experienced yet. I didn't to anybody in there. And it was, I just, as I came to him, I just thought I was crying profusely. And and he goes, I know. I'm like, wow, boy, does that bring stuff back. I know. And again, I trusted him. He had so many occasions where, he had shared his intuition and it was very clear he had these amazing capabilities. And he goes, I know, it's okay. And it just made me feel so at ease, at that moment. And as he talked to me outside of the chapel, he goes, "Do you know when you were walking across the carpet?" Now, this is crazy, boy. This is years later, and still you can see the profoundness of it. Is that he said, "Do you know that your feet were not touching the carpet?" Okay, now hear this stuff, right? Again, from somebody you trusted. And he said, but that was a powerful experience. It'll take a lot of time to be able to digest it, uh, but stay with it. You'll learn. So that's really it, right? And then I went on, I was able to sort of fortunately be with a great group, attend the workshop. I was able to set it aside. Again, I didn't really talk about it, but that was the experience, right? And that's really why I don't really very often share that, is because it still brings such a high degree of emotion. And it made me better appreciate those who have near-death experiences today because as I listened to their stories and the emotion that they so often shared and going through that experience and what had happened, I could now appreciate, that sentiment and feeling. I'm not saying I had a near-death experience at all. The term that somebody said I had was an out-of-body experience. I don't like terms, because people get hung up on the intellectual aspect of spirituality. To me, it was what it was. But nevertheless, it was profound, and it had forever changed me. And remember, it all started, when I was asking, right, for that evidence, and then the two eagles appeared and the gentleman on the rock, and all of a sudden it was just like, oh my gosh, oh my God. This is that, wow, there's something to all of this. There really is something to this. And I certainly had the experience. Well, when I came back, I eventually came back to where I was living, upstate New York, settled back in and, gone on with my life, my routine that I was doing. But I was ready for my next step of the adventure, and this thing that stayed with me so that I could fly, needed to let you go so that I could fly. Well, first of all, I never even shared that, even with the woman that I was with at that time that had the breakup because I probably thought I was crazy, and I thought I was, frankly, except for the Tom intervention that really said, no, it's okay. Well, it did, and it promoted me. I was like, okay. I said, now there's something to life. There really is something to life. What a profound statement to make. I had enough evidence that was beginning to develop in experiences in my life that was beginning to break through this whole veil that we have when we come to this plane on Earth, to be able to sort of get the experiences to realize there's really something here. Well, what a great point to have to be in my life, right? To be able to now know at myself. I'm not trying to convince anybody else of that. I say, hey, go find it for yourself. Open up to it and watch what happens. And because that's what I had done. And I never realized that I'd really been asking for these things along. Well, I was asking for my next journey. And the next thing you know, I got a phone call, and you'll never guess who, right? From another woman who I'd met at the conference that I was when I talked about that last couple of sessions, and this woman, her name is Margaret, and Margaret herself was a near-death experiencer. And she had this great experience, and her husband was from Africa. And at the conference that I was, she had spoke about uh, that she goes there periodically back to Africa to volunteer. And she had said is she talked about the volunteering thing. It sounded awesome. It's in the back areas in the tribes, right? It's like National Geographic territory, of which we would go to. Uh, and if anybody was interested, they'd have to pay their own way. But she was more than happy to have us tag along, and we'd play a role in all of this. Well, if nothing else, she called me. She called me, and it was this amazing sort of like deja vu experience. Margaret, hey, and she goes, I just wanted to remind you about that trip they expressed an interest in. We're heading out. And all I did, I said, I'm in. Why? I'm in. I'm in. And off I went. Right. It was a 18-hour flight. That was the longest nonstop flight from New York, LaGuardia Airport, into Johannesburg. Oh, no, yeah. Was it Johannesburg? Yes, it is Johannesburg uh, Airport. Right. And so then we landed. And I now was about ready to embark on another life-changing experience. I'll begin this and I'll finish this off with the next podcast because it was an incredible experience. On my way, I had read about the experience of people going to Africa, volunteering in Africa, and they said that there's nothing else like it. It's the best way to sort of get in touch with the origins of humanity, since that's a lot of where it happened. And it was so simple in areas that you really felt it. And I was in the areas I went. There were no clocks. There was no, I mean, this concept of time, was there. There was people didn't even reference age or how old they are. There was no sort of influence of what we in the West here, are operated by every day. And all of a sudden I was immersed in this experience where there was no time. And really just settle in to this incredible experience. Well, as image portrays here, and I'm going to go to the one, I love Swaziland. That's where we first went. And in that, you'll see that's a picture of Margaret, and she is meeting the Sangoma to the king. right? So it was a tribe, there was a king, and the Sangoma, is a word for witch doctor. And that's who I would be paired up with because I was there because of my emergency medical technician background, and she just felt that that would be a good match for me to meet and spend time with him. Well, the very first thing we did, he sat down and he spoke enough English, again, a lot of the European influence, so there was English typically around most places there. And so we sat down and he said, I'd like to give you a reading. And okay, he did. And he reached around and he had this bag and he opened it up and there were like stones and chicken bones and all the stuff that was in there, right? I mean, this is their world, their life, right? They don't have a lot of sophistication. They have the simple things that were around them. And then he threw them down on the ground. And then he gave me a reading. Well, doggone it. I mean, this person, here he was, thousands and thousands of miles from me, never met before, and everything else, but he was relating to my life. He was talking about my life, even back to the parents, the fact that the mother figure was no longer there, right? My mom had died when I was young, and there was a tough situation. And again, it was like freakish. But now by this time, what I realized is freaking me out wasn't the same challenge anymore. I was getting used to it, right? I said, okay, another experience. And again, being open-minded. Well, we went on to have an incredible experience together. And I'll never forget his little story. And I'll share this, and it's a great way to sort of just share the uniqueness of these journeys. Well, and he was talking about, no, 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 I don't like America. Oh, how do you know America? And he had said, oh, I've been there. Oh, my, really? Yes. And so he talked about that the Sangomas throughout Africa were invited through some organization to attend a medical conference that was taking place in, of all places, Las Vegas, right? So as he was describing what he didn't like, he was describing all this craziness, this behavior, the lights all around and everything else. And I sort of laughed, and I said, "Oh, now I can see why that would be such a contrast for you." I said, "But not all America's like that, And so it was just fun, right? Seeing he had one point of reference to it, and in its simplicity, thought that that was what America was all about. Well, we went on, we had such a great experience. And he talked so much about the healing and the health process there, the belief system. What a rich belief system. It was so focused on ancestry and that your ancestry, plays a direct part in terms of what you would experience in this life. And what was amazing is that, people as they went through experiences, health issues and other things, they accepted it. Accepted this is the way it was. But the most beautiful part to me was meeting the people. The simplicity of the people was amazing, right? And I'm not talking about from an intellectual capacity. I'm talking about a simplicity in terms of them being them. There was no facades, no perceptions, no trying to present, oh, I'm better than somebody else. I'm the physician to the king, or I know the king, or none of that. It was just so simple. And it just through the experience helped me a chance to realize wow, who is really the ones that are fortunate, right? Now, we would consider them probably poor, impoverished, and not having the material kind of possessions that we have as being a disadvantage. But I really realized differently. No, I think we were the ones that were at the disadvantage because we couldn't enjoy life in its simplicity and holistically and the value that they put on the relationships. So, I was a total stranger. It took me in under his wings and just shared me the time. I met the people, and it was like I was home. That's the only way I could describe it. At night, we had the whole ceremony leading up to the dinner. They had killed a goat. And I mean, it was testing the limits, right? Because here, we go out and buy stuff at the store. but here they killed it, right? They killed it. And part of the whole ceremony is that, is this a senior person would then put the goat, who's cut out in the side and all the guts taken out, and he put it on head and dance around while everybody celebrated. And so it was really strange, it sort of confronted some of the our own belief system and things that were there. But then after that, they started a drum ceremony. And I'll never forget that, because the drums and how they played the drums. And I think that's characteristic how people describe the Native American Indians here. And I did experience that in Sedona as well, with respect to Native American Indians playing the drums. And it very much, it creates like a period of time where it's its own meditation. I started to just disappear into the landscape here and just listen to the drums, and it was as if I disappeared in that. And that's, again, the only words I could use to describe it. But it was amazing in terms of the experience. Well, I went on, just had one amazing experience. And that's a good place to sort of conclude, this podcast. And I'll expand on next week, sort of finishing off the African experience, right? It was unbelievable in terms of its impact and the amazing people I would meet, the simplicity of their cultures, and just realizing also the unfortunate bias and discrimination of things like apartheid, and the sadness that these things are. And it helped to really, for me, confront this whole idea of discrimination and bias, and really go a long ways to really work hard internally to be able to eliminate that. And we'll talk about some of the places that I went, the amazing people that I met, and this experience. Because what was happened, just like Michael or Crichton had said in his quote about sometimes I have to, go far places to be able to learn about myself. And I was, because I was confronting all of these aspects of myself, these old beliefs, these ways of which we have the rituals and numbers and age and fast pace, and contrasting that with the simplicity of life and the people and the connections. And I was continuing to change. And that is the most powerful element of the modern day vision quest. I opened myself up to experience very different contrasts. And it's through the contrast that we really begin to come to think about, contemplate, and reflect about what those meant, and challenging our own former beliefs. Well, my hope is that this experience, write it off. Certainly, any response is fine and totally understood. But if it can serve as the ability to be able to influence the fact that there really is meaning to life, that was this conclusion I was coming to. What a profound opening. It was entering the stage of enlightenment, to be continued as we get into the next episode, talking about these experiences. And here's to you taking that time to really begin to open yourself up to new experiences, wherever they are, right in your backyard, in the home, wherever the case may be, but beginning to open yourself up to experiences, to begin to start contemplating who you really are. Hey, everybody, take care. Thanks for the opportunity to share. Wishing you the best. Talk to you next time. Bye. I'm Michael McGinnis, and you've been listening to You Can Do It, Inspiring Growth, Igniting Potential. Tune in every second and fourth Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time on Transformation Talk Radio. As a recognized educator, author, and speaker on human potential, let's learn together how to make the most out of this life and to put a ding in your universe. This is the incredible journey of personal and spiritual growth, self-discovery, and enlightenment. For more information, visit growhumanpotential.com.